Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of HR at the Table. For those of you that have never been to an HR at the Table before, or it's been a while, welcome, welcome, welcome. A little bit of housekeeping really quickly. First, my name's Liv Carter. I'm the host for today's episode. I am not the expert here. I just get the pleasure of interviewing our awesome speaker who I'm excited to introduce here in a second. Additionally, if you've never been to an HR at the Table webinar, this is not your normal webinar. So it's going to be structured a little bit differently. And the reason behind that is this webinar series is all about providing educational resources to all of you that is in our crowd today. We really want to bring in thought leaders, individuals in HR, talent acquisition, people management, tech, that really have a passion for what they do and want to share with the community, including all of you. So we've got a great speaker here, and we are so excited to have her join us. Before we jump in, just a few more things. HR at the Table has been going on for now 5 seasons. Today's the first episode of season 5, which is crazy to say out loud, but we are so thankful for all of you that have attended and continue to join us. So, to keep the momentum going, there's a couple things. One, we always record our episodes. HR at the Table, we've got great speakers with a lot of insight, and we know our hands can only write or type as fast as possible. So don't worry, this episode will be recorded, and you can watch it back or share it with a colleague, a friend, a leader as well. Additionally, you will receive SHRM and HRCI credit. If you stay till the end, we've got a slide with a code, and you can submit that into your SHRM and HRCI portals, as well as any HR at the Table webinar recording on our website, verifiedfirst.com. There's a little HR at the Table section in our menu. You can get SHRM and HRCI credit for watching on demand as well. And then lastly, we really enjoy it when HR at the Table is engaging, and we know you all are getting the value out of it. So please ask questions. There's a Q&A little option in your GoToWebinar platform kind of layout. You can also send a chat, although Q&A would be preferred for my kind of management on the conversation. And we'll ask those questions, time allowing, throughout today's event. So please be engaged. We love to make sure you're getting the most out of today's episode. Now, that said, I want to introduce our topic here, which is balancing tech, talent, and leadership. I'm so excited for this topic, and we've got just the right speaker for it, who I'm going to introduce in just a second. Before I do, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Breezy HR, a partner of Verified First, is sponsoring today's episode, and we're thankful. I'm sure some of you in the audience are clients of Breezy HR, and it's great to have you join us as well. Now, enough of me talking. My goodness, let's get to the good part here. I want to introduce our speaker, Kim Wilkes. She's the Senior Manager of Talent Attraction at Zapier. And we are just so excited to have Kim here. So Kim, before we jump into today's topic, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you're passionate about?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. This is my first virtual webinar for the year. So
Yay!
excited that I can make this one the first one of
Awesome.
2025. And yeah, a little bit about me. I've been in the talent space now for over 10 years. I started out probably like many in the recruiting space, started out at an RPO and later moved into tech. I've been working in tech now for, I don't know, 8+ years, where I've been involved in everything from full life cycle recruiting to sourcing, leading teams within that type of work, as well as training and development, onboarding, and more significantly is employer brand and talent attraction. And that's a lot of the work that I get to do at Zapier. I've been at Zapier for a little over 2.5 years. and I lead talent attraction. So I have an amazing team of sourcers that are going out and bringing in all of the talent for the majority of our roles that we hire for. And I also lead our talent attraction and talent brand efforts. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, excited to be here and share more tips and tricks with everyone else who's on the call.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kim. Thank you so much. And I just love how I hearing how everyone got into HR or TA and just their background. And Kim and I have had some conversations, and it's just so insightful. And audience, I want you to know you're in good hands for today's episode. So we are excited. Before we really jump into it, I just want to make sure everyone knows where the chat and question functionality is. So if this is your first time attending HR at the table, maybe put in the chat where you're listening or watching from. If you've been to multiple HR at the tables, maybe share, I don't know how many you've been to. Maybe you've been with us for all 5 seasons, something fun like that. But as you all are doing that, we'll go ahead and get this thing going. So I want to start with talking about attracting top talent. And Kim, I love your title, Talent Attraction. And I want to unpack that a little bit more. But just to kind of start with where we're at today, start of 2025, the new year. What trends are you seeing or foresee that will really shape the talent market today?
Yeah, that's such a great question, such an important question. And it's interesting because I shared a post about this on LinkedIn just a couple of weeks ago after reading an article from the Martech. And the Martech is a really great company that builds content at scale for organizations. And they also shared their thoughts on this. But what was really top of mind, and it's interesting because it's like everything that we're discussing here on this call today, is really things like balancing AI with also providing a human touch, specifically in your recruiting and your hiring process. I think it's also about creating an employer value proposition or an EVP, one that is relatable and that is genuine and authentic to who your company really is. And then being able to share those real genuine experiences. There's a lot of research out there that shows that when candidates see content from individuals, it resonates so much more deeply than just company sponsored content. So I think those are definitely some key trends that I am seeing in the market when it comes to really just talent attraction. So I'm excited that we're here discussing that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to unpack
Yeah.
each of those a little bit further, but I'm just curious with the ones that you mentioned there, are there any, is one more important than the other, I guess, for 2025, or is one more effective, or do they all kind of play with each other?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I thought about this recently because I was listening to a podcast, and one of the words that they use to describe the tech industry is just saturated. You have a lot of people that are doing the same things. And so, how do you really set yourself apart? And that's where at Zapier and the work that I'm trying to do myself is to really help our teammates tell their own stories and share their own experiences in a really genuine and an authentic way. Because if you're doing and saying the same thing as everyone else, it becomes something that folks can't really connect with on a true like human level and providing that personalized experience for them. So for us, it's really about like how do we set ourselves apart? How do we tell our story? And how do we do so in a way that is really genuine and authentic, where you're hearing from the people at the company? So those who are considering joining your company can say, wow, I deeply understand who they are, what they're trying to do, and learning a little bit more about their people, which can help them decide, is this the right place for me? So that's a big, big focus for mine this year.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm excited for us to talk more about technology and leveraging technology to do just that. I think sometimes I was just talking to an individual about this on sometimes we forget the access that candidates have today, right? If they want to hear from employees at your company, there's ways to do that, right? They're gonna do that. They're gonna go out of their way to do that. So I'm really excited to hear more about what you guys are doing at Zapier and aligning that with brand as well. So kind of with that, the market last year, and we've seen it for some time now, is really candidates receiving multiple offers, right? And talent going quickly. So I'm just curious on, and I'm sure you briefly touched on it there, but how do you make your organization or Zapier the most appealing option, right? Any insight or thoughts there?
Yeah, I think first, I think from the talent attraction standpoint, I think it's getting like really clear on who you are as an organization and the type of people that will really thrive there. And one of the best ways to do that, I would say, is to talk to your peers, talk to your teammates at the company, and they can give you a really clear sense of what's resonating with them, what do they love about the company, and what are the real challenges that they're facing. And that way, if you're putting those things out there, candidates have a clear sense of what could I expect? What are the things that make this company great? But what are the honest challenges that I might face? Like if I'm coming into a fully remote asynchronous company, what are those challenges going to be? So I think helping folks understand that from the beginning. And then I think to take that further and like really providing a great experience for those folks, I always say like take it back to the basics and just provide that true human experience. Like really get to know someone. Make sure in that first connection, that first conversation you have with them, that you're getting to know them so that they feel comfortable in that setting. They can be themselves. They can really showcase their work and what they could bring to your company. I think that's just so key in providing that best experience that you can. And there's so much more that I know that we can dig into, but those are definitely
Yeah.
two things that come to mind for me right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I know we will go deeper here. So we've got a whole webinar ahead of us, although I will say the time flies. And I'm always like, we could have gone another hour, 2 hours, but we'll
Mhm.
make the most of this hour that we have. Um, but Kim, I think that's really insightful. And you touched on, again, not just the basics, but going back to the human element of things. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that and balancing tech and humanity. And I know right now there's a lot of conversations on technology and specifically AI, and automating processes and reporting and whatnot. So let's start on the AI side and talk about that as a use in technology. And um, how do you see tools like AI kind of reshaping how we maybe identify or connect with candidates?
Yeah, such a great question. I would say, first of all, like I am a huge proponent of automation and AI. Obviously, I work at Zapier and we
Yep.
are on a mission to make automation work for everyone. So, what we build is really to help customers in streamlining their workflows and even building entire organizations all on automation so that they can get that time back. Hopefully, that can help them get their business off the ground and then they can start bringing in the people to do all the work that AI and automation doesn't do. So I'll just say, like, I'm a huge, huge advocate for AI and automation, and I really think that when it's used the right way, it can be used wrong, but when it's used the right way, that I really think that it's a game changer. And there's a number of different ways that we're using AI and automation just within our recruiting process. And we like to test different tools. Like for me, being responsible for our sourcing and our talent attraction organization, one of the things I really wanted to focus on this past like 6 to 12 months is how do we make it easier to identify talent? We often spend, and I'm sure for any recruiter or sourcer out there, you know how many hours it can take to identify the best talent. And then, of course, it's getting on the phone and having those interviews, building those relationships, working with hiring managers, and everything else that goes into it along the way. And so we've tested out a number of different tools. One of them, most recently, being profile.com. Shout out to them. They have done a great job starting from ground zero and now building their platform. That's been really helpful for our team because they scrape across 20 different platforms and they'll bring you candidates that you may or may not find on LinkedIn, but they're scraping their GitHub or their Stack Overflow profiles or whatever they have available to them. And then you get access to those candidates so much faster and you have more information on that profile. So when you want to share them with the hiring manager, you have so much more context to go off of. So that's just one of the tools. And I think it's a great way to help us save time, but also still be able to reach our goals. And then you have more time to provide that more human experience. So
Right.
I'm all
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I wanna chat about that a little bit longer, and I appreciate the real life example, because sometimes we can talk about, oh, in theory, AI, automation this, automation that, but really hearing how you guys are applying it is really neat. But I want to talk about that second half a little bit longer in how are you ensuring that that automation or that tool is really a complement, right, rather than replacing a recruiter, for example, or replacing that human element? Any thoughts or kind of your approach to that?
Yeah, we actually did an exercise here with our leadership team a few weeks ago, so it's perfect
Okay.
timing. We sat down as a leadership team and we listed out every single step of our hiring process, from application all the way through to offer. And we broke those down to get a sense, and we ranked them on a scale of 0 to 5. How much would you want to use AI or automation at that stage, or would you not? And we all ranked them. We had a good conversation, and it became really clear the areas where we thought, yes, maybe we should use more AI and automation to provide a better candidate experience, to maybe get candidates updates faster in the process and where they are in interviewing with us. Or maybe it's a place where we've said, no, absolutely not. Like, this is where we need to provide that personalized experience, and we don't want AI and automation to be a part of that. For us, we said, we are interviewing all of our candidates. We could, of course, figure out ways to incorporate AI and automation to maybe handle our interviews, but we want to personally meet with the folks that could potentially be joining our company. So, no, we will not be automating that. So, I would just say if you're not sure, maybe start there. Start by listing out the steps of your process, thinking about your company values. Think about what you commit to. If you commit to reviewing every application, then you want to make sure that you do that. And maybe you don't automate that part of the process. And once you get really clear on, hey, maybe these are the top 2 or 3 areas where we do want to incorporate AI and automation, focus on those couple. Start there, test it out, see how it's working, solicit feedback. And if you're getting feedback, you're seeing that it's really not providing a better experience, then maybe scrap it and try something else. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I love how you started, you mentioned back to the basics. Like you guys mapped out your hiring process and then determined where it would fit. I'm sure that was a very fun and insightful exercise too, to understand where everyone's coming from with their opinions there too.
It was. It was really helpful too because there were some areas where I might have said, I think that we should introduce automation or AI here. And a colleague of mine said, no, I don't think so, but here's why. And it was just a great exercise to share a little bit more about why do you think that, or are there certain tools that maybe you're using, or maybe tools I'm using that you haven't tried yet, that maybe we could share with each other, and that could maybe change our perspectives. But in general, yeah, it was just really great to have those conversations. And I think for it to be a space where like we could disagree and commit, or we could say, you know what, you're right, I never thought about it that way, and then it just gave us different perspective.
Right. Absolutely. So on that, because I think sometimes we say AI and we're assuming everything, right? We're scrapping everything, we're replacing these people, and it can be built up to such a big, scary thing. Um, I guess for our audience, if anyone is maybe a little bit more weary or less enthusiastic on leveraging AI or automation, or maybe they have leaders that are not on board with it. Do you have any advice or thoughts on where they could maybe start that conversation? Yeah, I'll leave it there before I add on.
Where did you want me to share, or do we want to hear from folks in the chat?
Oh yeah, if there's, I mean, folks, if there's any ideas or thoughts, go ahead and put them. It looks like I'm getting some comments in the question section, which is great as well. So I will go through those and ask some questions. But um, Kim, just to kind of start with you, maybe any thoughts on, our audience, where could they start or how do they start having those conversations?
Yeah, I think the best place to start is to really ask yourself, like, what are we trying to solve?
Mm.
Maybe it's looking at feedback that you're getting from your candidates. Like at Zapier, we always send out candidate feedback surveys, and I'm always on sites like Glassdoor and Comparably and in her site and hearing from candidates. So if you're hearing that maybe feedback is an issue for you, maybe
Mhm.
candidates are telling you I'm not getting consistent feedback. Maybe that's something that you want to look into. Could we automate or could we incorporate AI in a certain way, or maybe could we use our ATS to help us in that regard? You still want to get back to folks within a certain period of time. Maybe you could automate reminders and you're still sending the messaging yourself. So I always point it back to like, what is the problem or what is something you're trying to solve? And then you can look into what some of those options might be. And I will also say, huge fan of ChatGPT. I know we all like use it quite, I'm sure, quite significantly in the work that we do. But I love even just typing those challenges that I'm facing into ChatGPT to say, here's what I found, here's the actual information I have. Can you help me curate some solutions based on the specific feedback I'm getting at Zapier? And that's often been a really great way to help me at least like start thinking about what solutions I might want to implement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And our audience, feel free to put your thoughts in the Q&A section. I know we're troubleshooting the chat functionality, but Kim, I think that's really insightful. Are there specifically, I think one of the concerns, and we've talked about it on this series before, is potential bias, right? By using technology built by humans. And humans have bias, right? Any thoughts on how you mitigate or kind of manage that?
Yeah, I think getting a sense of like what the tools would offer you if there's a new tool that you want to try. For example, one of the tools that we are using heavily that we've been using for over a year now is BrightHire. And BrightHire will record your interviews and take notes for you. And I know that before we rolled it out, there were some concerns on our team of, well, will there be bias in this process or would this work against candidates knowing that they're being recorded? And I absolutely see where those concerns would come from. And so we just said, you know what, let's test it out and let's see what happens. But we also had a lot of conversations with the team at BrightHire to say, here's our concerns. How do you help us in overcoming them? And it turns out it's actually been a really great tool, but I think it's also like how we're communicating it to candidates. We're not using the video against you, we're actually using it to advocate for you. We can record your whole interview and we can cut it into like a 3 or 4 minute clip and send it to the hiring manager to say, you wanted someone that has experience doing XYZ thing. Here's a 3 minute section of this video where they did a really great job talking about that I want to share with you to really advocate for that person. So I think
Yeah.
partnering with the right organizations and looking at the right tools that also care about those things is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you went back to the vendor or the solution, and it's a true partnership, right? When you identify a challenge and they can kind of help you navigate it or come up with some solutions there. And you started touching on the candidate experience there, and I want to spend some more time really chatting through creating an interview process that candidates will love, and utilizing AI and technology in that process as well. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll question. Let's get the audience um, engaged in another way. I see some comments in the Q&A, but I'm going to launch this. For those of you that have attended an HR at the table before, you know that we ask this question in all of our webinars, to really get a feel of where we're at as a community when it comes to technology and the areas that we're investing in or maybe steering away from. And this is really great data for you all to keep in mind as well. Not that any organization is the same. And then we collect it and we put it in a guide and report at the end of the year. So this is the first one for 2025. Kim, any thoughts when it comes to technology, AI areas of the traditional tech stack, or maybe solutions outside of the traditional tech stack that you all are exploring, or you've seen or noticed from other organizations or colleagues?
Yeah, I will say too, I think it's interesting seeing like the broad range of areas that everyone here is either looking to replace or maybe they're looking to double down on. It's really interesting to
Yeah.
see that it's like it's across the board. It's not just one thing. I would say at Zapier for us, like we always look at all of these things and try to decide, is this the best solution for us? And we'll test out some different options. And about a year ago, we transitioned to Ashby. So we were using Gem and we were using Greenhouse and a number of other tools that were all separate. And by going to Ashby, it's now our CRM and our ATS in one, but it's also allowed us to bring a lot of other tools that we had in-house within Ashby as well. So it's just made the process a lot more seamless. I think both for hopefully for candidates, but also for our recruiting team and for our hiring managers having access to everything in one place. So that's something that like we've really put a lot of time and energy into and really working with the team at Ashby to customize it as much as possible so that it suits our practices and thinking about how we aim to provide a really great candidate experience. So that's
Yeah.
definitely like really, really big for us. And it's something that we continue to focus on and we continue to dig into how is this working or how is that working? Is this not working well? Let's try to streamline it a little bit more. So it's been an ongoing thing for us, but I think it's really helped our team.
Yeah, super interesting because we've noticed that too. Either and sometimes we'll get additional comments on, hey, I'm trying to have everything in one solution, or I've got multiple solutions that I really enjoy, and I just want them to talk to each other, and be efficient, effective. So appreciate you sharing Zapier's experience, especially when it comes to the tech side. So with that, let's talk about technology and utilizing that for candidates. So I kind of want to start just high level. Any thoughts on how leaders in our audience, right, can tailor an interview process to meet some of the expectations of today's workforce, right, and what candidates expect to experience?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what candidates are looking for, and especially in
Sure.
today's market. You can see a lot of it on LinkedIn. I think folks are often sharing about their experiences, what they love, what they don't love. But hey, it's important to pay attention to that because things are constantly changing. I
Right.
also love working with LinkedIn. They do a great job in providing an overview of here's what candidates are looking for now based on the type of role they have and also based on location. So if you know
Mhm.
that, then you can make sure that you're positioning what you do offer at your company to those particular candidates. So if you have sales candidates in the US that are maybe for them compensation and benefits is the most important thing, then you really want to make sure that you're highlighting what you offer as a company so that you can attract those types of candidates. So I think, understanding what's in the market, listening to candidates. I always say ask for feedback. One of our values at Zapier is grow through feedback. So reviewing the feedback that you're getting from candidates in whatever way you're getting that, and then taking action to improve in that. I think those are some like really great ways to make sure that you're meeting their expectations because those expectations are always changing. You can't just keep doing the same thing year over year and hope that you're providing the experience that everyone's looking for.
Right, absolutely. And those resources help. I'm curious. So you mentioned getting feedback from candidates. What does that look like for Zapier? Do you guys, is it if they come on board as an employee, that's part of the onboarding is like, hey, share your experience, or what does that workflow look like?
Yeah, we're asking for feedback and asking folks to share their experiences at all stages of our process. So if they're a candidate, we have custom forms that we've built into Ashby, and they will reach candidates after the end of their interview process. So whether their interview process ends at the recruiter screen or at the hiring manager interview, or maybe post offer and post joining our company, they will
Yeah.
receive a survey so that they can tell us what they thought of the process. And then we
Okay.
can take that in and make those changes if we need to. And then yeah, absolutely, after somebody joins the company, that's even some of the work that I do is I will reach out to folks after they've gone through their onboarding to ask them, how's your experience so far? How is your onboarding so far? Would you like to share your experience so that candidates have a better sense of what you're experiencing once you're here? You could share a testimonial on LinkedIn. You could share a review on Glassdoor, on Comparably. So there's a number of ways that they could showcase their experiences too.
Right, absolutely. So I'm curious then if kind of collecting this feedback and insight from candidates, um, are there certain things that you've heard make a job interview process great? What's some of the feedback that you guys have received, or you've, researched or understood from those some of those sources that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think one that I love when we hear this from candidates, but they're often telling us that they love that the application process, in most cases, is very simple and easy to work through. We don't
Mm.
require resumes, so all you have to do is fill out an application, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we commit to providing updates within 7 days. We're not perfect, but I think our team does a really, really great job the majority of the time getting back to folks within 7 days, even if it's to say, hey, it's going to be a few more days. Holidays are around the corner, but we're going to be in touch with you within a few days. So I think we get a lot of really great feedback from candidates on that. And I think, candidates are just looking for, again, like that honest, personalized experience and just making the time, making yourself available. Give them your email address, your phone number, allow them to text you if you're comfortable. I don't that's always been my experience and just saying, hey, I'm here for you and I'm here to answer any questions whenever you need it, and just being able to be available for that person and answering their questions and addressing any of the concerns that they might have. I think that that's really key.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I think it's funny because we talk about, in terms of when we choose a vendor or a solution to partner with, what we want out of that partnership. And it's kind of the same with candidates, right? They want some sort of commitment, transparency, honesty, which I think is the sign of a partnership, and just respect, right, of each other's time.
Yes, and I love that you said transparency too, because I think that is so key. And I still see, I see companies that do it well, but I also see companies that I think there's still an opportunity to do more of this year.
Yeah.
When it comes to sharing your compensation ranges in your job descriptions, like give candidates an understanding of what they could potentially be making before they take the time to write a resume or to fill out a job application. I think that transparency is so key. And I'll say, like, one of the other things that I've seen some of our leaders do at Zapier that I think is really neat that I never saw at any other company is
Hmm.
that they will share a document called a README in the job description. And a README is basically like a 1 or 2 page document that talks about them as a person, as a leader. Like, what are their values? How do they operate? How do they like to give feedback? How would they help you grow in your role? And so, as a candidate, you're not only just looking at the job and the compensation, but you're getting a sense of, is this a manager or a leader who I would want to work for? So I think just
Yeah.
like going a step deeper with that level of transparency is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. See, this is why we record, because I'm gonna earmark that and go back to it there. Yeah, that's unique, and I haven't heard of that quite yet. So, um, Kim, real quick before we continue there, we do have a question in the chat from Judy. Um, Judy was wondering, can you elaborate on the assessment if you're not requesting or requiring a resume in the application process? So a little bit more insight, I think, into Zapier's process there.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So we make all of our application questions in partnership with our hiring teams. So we try to make them very specific for every job. And in some, you might see some questions that might say, if you were to join our team, these are some of the challenges that you might face. How would you face a similar challenge? Or tell us how you have faced a challenge like this in the past, but how you also might be able to bring your expertise to help us do that here in the future. In some of them, we will actually even have candidates create a Zap and automate a process to illustrate their technical expertise before they even come into our full application process. So it really depends on the job itself, but we really try to balance between how much can we get from this person to really learn about them without hopefully it taking too much time for them to have to put so much into the application only to find out that maybe it wasn't the best fit. So I think finding that balance is really key too. But I love the fact that we don't require resumes because I think about folks all the time that might be maybe they're happy or they're in a current job, maybe they're not happy in their current job, but they're having a hard time finding the time to put a resume together. And so I think that can create barriers, but it's also just an opportunity again to hear not only what have you done, but like what are the things that you want to do? How do you want to help us solve these problems that we're trying to solve at our company, and learning more about a person's skills that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And thank you for elaborating on that, Kim. And a great question, Judy, as well. So thank you for submitting that. Kim, we have one more question kind of following up on that. So, how do you navigate AI used for responses to written questions or written samples? Great question, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I love that question because, as I said, I love using AI and automation myself. I am a huge fan of using one of our new tools at Zapier, which is called Agents. It was previously Central. And
Hmm.
Agents is basically an AI assistant that you can build. You can make it as detailed as you want to. You can give it as many inputs as you want. So you can send it resources, documents, websites, whatever that you might want candidates to have access to. And I love it because it helps me create outreach messages, and it also helps me respond to candidates, but in a way that's like highly personalized because it's reading their profile or it's reading their email, and it's providing them with additional resources that I would love to send them myself, but sometimes we just don't always have the time to make it that customized. But it's doing that for me. But of course, I will say I always review before I just send something from AI to someone. I really make sure it's in my own words, and that I'm really addressing the questions or concerns that that person had. I will say I love using agents as well because it can help me create social posts. It reads entire web pages, it listens to podcasts, it reads entire documents, and it can help you in creating content based on that. Usually, I then take it and I put it into ChatGPT because I've been using ChatGPT for so long that it knows a lot more about my tone and my voice and how I would sound. And then, of course, I put it in my own words before I put something out there in the world. I don't always trust exactly some of the terminology or the words that it's providing to me, but I will say it's been huge for me because it's saving me a lot of time, but it's still helping me in presenting my work the way that I feel like I would want to be represented. So it's been really helpful, and I would just encourage people to, anyone here, to test it out if you haven't.
Yeah, love that. And I think that's a great question. Sarah and Kim, thanks for kind of uh, elaborating on how you leverage it there. Um, uh, One more follow-up question. I love that we're on a roll here. A question from Lauren. Since candidates use AI as well, so kind of from the other perspective, right? Is there a way for recruiters to know if it was created by the candidate or written by, ChatGPT? Any thoughts on that, Kim, or situations you've had to navigate?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can tell.
Yes.
It's funny. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say it's funny. I just, our team will often share with each other responses and applications that we've seen where we know it's a response generated with AI. I mean, you
Yeah.
could plug in a question yourself and see what the response is and what it generates for you. And if you're getting the same thing, then it's clear that it's been using AI. We also have some that have included the prompt in their response. And so that's been a clear flag for us. And I would say, like, I personally, I like using AI, but I think that it can help you at its best when you give it your own personal information and maybe ask you to help refine it in a way that's worded well, but using your experience, your specific skills. And that's what I
Right.
would really encourage folks to do because otherwise, companies may not be interested in moving forward if they're seeing that you're not providing that honest, genuine response.
Yeah. And I imagine that goes back to kind of you all mapping out your hiring process and at what point do you, right, bring in the human to fact check or to review, ensure, that the candidate truly has this experience or can kind of take on that hands-on approach. So I'm sure that helps kind of, oh, you wrote this, but here's what we're seeing now.
Yeah, and a tip that I would have too is like take the resources you already have. If you already have a resume, if you have a cover letter, take those resources and ask the AI to help you craft a response using, again, like your own experiences and what you have written down on paper, utilizing your data, your accomplishments. And that way you are streamlining the process and making it faster, and you can fill out these applications in less time, but it is also very specific to you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great question there, Lauren. Now, Kim, before we move on to leadership, because we're jumping, technology, that human element and leadership. Um, just going back to kind of the interview or evaluation process, are there any innovative or unique interview formats or approaches that you all have taken or you've seen that have resonated well with candidates or have provided a really uh, positive experience?
Yeah, something that we used to do at Uber. I worked at Uber several years ago when I was building a recruiting team that worked really, really well was rather than just asking a lot of the standard questions that you might typically ask in an interview, we would do an exercise and we would give folks like a hypothetical situation, and we would ask them like, let's say that we bring you in and you need to fill, I don't know, 50 positions within the first year that you're here. You are welcome to make any assumptions you'd like, ask us questions, and then start telling us how you would go about the work. And I found that to be a really helpful exercise because it wasn't so much about what the person had done, but it's what they would do if they were being brought into the team. And then within that, I would ask certain questions to get a sense of how would you overcome this challenge or how would you overcome that challenge. And what I looked for was folks that would say, I've never had to face that before. I'm not sure if this is right, but what I might do or what I might try is this. It's not so much about having the right answer or the best answer, but it illustrates that you're willing to think about how might I address this and what are the steps that I could take, and showcasing your willingness to just try to figure it out. So I love doing exercises like that.
Yeah, yeah, love that and love the focus on future thinking and if they were in that position. Um, yeah, instead of just what your resume or your application says you've done. I think I was kind of thinking about it as you were sharing. There's so many variables, unknown variables of their previous position or positions that uh, you can't account for as the recruiter or hiring manager, but you can account for or recognize the potential variables of the position you're hiring for in your organization. So I really like that approach, Kim. I think that's very insightful.
Yeah, and I think it's also I think of myself and a lot of people that I've interviewed. Even if you've
Yeah,
been in a field for a while, it doesn't mean that you've done everything. And I think it's okay to also realize that during this interview, even if I haven't done that before, it doesn't mean that I'm not qualified or that I'm not going to get the job. It's all about saying, hey, I haven't done that before, but here's what I could do. Using the skills I have, this is what I might try. And who knows, that interviewer might say, wow, that's actually a really great idea. We've never tried that here. I love that answer. Thank you for sharing that. Maybe you end
right.
up getting the job. So don't be afraid to share what you even might do if you've never done it before.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kim, before we start talking about leadership and our audience is full of whether managers, directors, C-suites, before we jump into talking about leadership, I want to talk about kind of the end of the hiring process and how you leverage human and technology in that. I think we've talked about on HR the table, you've got the um, two sides of it. You've got human always reaches out and calls the candidate and says, no, you like, sorry, we're going to move on with another candidate. Then you got the other side of the spectrum where it's an automated email that once you decline or reject whatever term in your ATS, it sends an email. And so I'm just curious kind of with your perspective and your experience, how do you balance the human side and the tech side?
Mm, yeah, that's so important. I think back to our values and I think back to the commitments that we make as a company. So I would encourage any team to really go back to what are your values as a company And if you hadn't outlined the commitments that you want to make to candidates, that's something that you could consider doing. We have an article that you could read, and it shows at the application stage, this is what we commit to. We commit to reviewing every single application, and we commit to getting back to you in 7 days. When it comes to the recruiter screen, we commit to discussing compensation with you so that you have a clear understanding of what you could be paid right there during that first initial interview. So I think just getting like really, really clear on the things that you know you want to offer or that you do offer, and then sticking to that. That would be my advice, because otherwise it can get a little bit muddy and you can get stuck in trying to decide, well, what do I automate? What do I not? How do I want to go about this? But if you're really clear on the experience you want to provide, then you can ask yourself, if this is the experience I want to provide, would AI help me, or would it actually hurt the experience of that other person? And if it's detracting from their experience, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So starting with the commitments, and I love that, and I'm gonna have to note take that one again. So with that, because again, our audience, I know a lot of them are leaders in some form or fashion, and then you've got HRTA teams of 1 or 20 or 50, so I want to talk about how do we apply this, and how as leaders do we um, advocate for whether it's AI or improving the candidate experience. So just kind of starting with the commitments, I am curious on how you started having those conversations internally. Um, were you just like, hey, here are the commitments, and let's this is what we commit to with candidates, or was it similar to your process and identifying areas to automate or leverage AI with other leaders?
Yeah, we first started as a leadership team where
Okay.
we outlined our process, and then we had that conversation where we were ranking the different places where we might want to automate or not automate. And then we brought the rest of the team into that, all of our recruiters, our sourcers, our talent operations team, and sharing that with them is, here's how we feel about these things. Now, if we do want to incorporate AI and automation into this stage or this stage, here's some ideas we have. This is where I love to go to my team and say, what other ideas do you have? If we're thinking that this is a great place to streamline this part of the process and provide a better candidate experience, or even make it easier for you as a recruiter or sourcer, do you have any ideas? Do you have any suggestions? Are there technologies that you've been testing out that maybe we should all become familiar with? And so I think that's been a great way to say, we're not going to do this. We are going to do this. Now we want to bring you into it. What ideas or what solutions do you have? And it's amazing when you do that, because we have teammates that are across our team that are constantly bringing in new solutions. Hey, I tried this, I tested it, worked really well. Does anyone else want to try it? And it can become very motivating and very exciting for the rest of the team to say, "Ooh, I want to try that too."
Yeah, yeah. Really engaging or trying to encourage participation throughout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
yeah. That's great. And so with that, I'm just curious, kind of when we think on a broader scale on leadership or leaders, um, what what does great leadership look like today? Like especially in the HR, talent acquisition, talent attraction space, how does our audience, or any thoughts on how our audience can um, become even better leaders, right? So that they can have these conversations that we've discussed today with other executives. I remember Kim kind of sharing the background of HR at the table. Was HR and TA finally had a voice, at the table, at the executive table, and it's something we want to hold on to. So any thoughts on, what great leadership looks like today? And I know that's a loaded question. So
It is. I was thinking about that myself too, and I thought, man, that's a hard one to answer, because
yeah,
everyone's so different, and leadership can look so much different from person to person.
yeah,
So it's a tough one to answer. So I tried to think about things that were helpful for me as I've evolved and grown as a leader. I definitely think one of the things would be empathy, and we probably hear about it all the time, and some might feel, hey, I'm an empathetic person. I was just kind of born this way. It's just who I am. And others might feel like maybe they're lacking those skills. I do still think regardless, you can continue to hone those skills and to grow in that way. And when I think about empathy, it's really listening and really understanding what your team is going through at a given time. There's
Mm.
so much happening in the world. We know that the workplace is changing, how we're using AI and automation. Some might feel a little uneasy about those things. So I think empathy is always first, and it's just asking those questions like, how are you feeling about this? Is there any support that I can offer for you? Do you want to talk about this a little bit more? Really be there for that person. The other thing, too, that I would say that's been very helpful for me is really learning how to effectively manage change as a leader. I know we're facing new changes in today's market and our workplaces, and I continue to hear you have to do more with less. And so one week you're focused here, the next week you're focused there. And I think being able to manage through change is so, so important. And I don't think that I always did that well. And because I felt that I wasn't leading my team effectively through change. So one of the things that's helped me when I'm introducing or having a conversation about something that's changing it within our team or within our workplace is making sure I'm always really clear about what is not going to change, and then what are the small things that will change, trying to make it as simple and as easy as possible, but then bringing people along, bringing the team along to say, if this is what's changing, how would you like to be a part of it? Do you have any ideas on how we can make it as simple and as easy as possible? So really trying to take that approach and being really clear about what's changing, what's not changing. And if you need resources or you need help as a leader, as I did, ask, raise your hand, say I'm stuck and I need some help. And it's amazing how many people will be there to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our audience, Kim has approved us having a QR code to her LinkedIn. So that'll be at the end of this webinar so you can connect with her. Because yeah, we're just one community that can really help each other. Um, so so Kim, on that, I want to touch on the change management piece just a little bit longer. As we've talked about potential changes our audience might be making, they might be looking at their current tech stack, they might be thinking of processes that they can automate or restructuring their hiring process, maybe even entirely. Um, any thoughts on, especially on the technology piece, how do you go about engaging your team when it comes to introducing technology or even considering, leveraging technology, especially if it's, again, when we think of AI, some people think of job security, and I can't use this tool because it's going to replace. So, any thoughts on or experiences on kind of helping our audience navigate those conversations with their teams?
Yeah, that's not always easy.
Yeah,
Um, I would say beyond like the organization's needs or your TA organization's needs, I would say ask your team. Go to your team and ask them, hey, if we were to introduce some new tools or if we were to introduce some AI or automation solutions, what are the things that you would want to solve? What are the things that are taking you the most time? What are the processes you hate? Where are you spending the most time doing boring administrative work? So, really getting to know what their pain points are so that
yeah,
then you can take that back and try to find the solutions that would solve that. That way, you're not just bringing in a whole bunch of potential solutions and saying, try this or try that. That's easy to do because there's so many options out there. But to go back to your team and say, hey, I talked to 5 organizations. I love these two. I think that they would be the best at solving what you told me you wanted to solve. I'd love to bring you into that now. Maybe we'll do a demo. You can tell me what you think of it. Would that really help in solving those challenges for you? And it's amazing when you can present it in that way to your team and then bring them along and you feel like you're really tackling it together as one team.
yeah, yeah. I love that, and kind of getting a little pulse check on how they already feel about maybe AI or technology before you really dive into the changes or potential changes. Um, I want to have a couple more questions, but just back on the change management piece. Now communicating upward to other leaders or an executive team. Um, Zapier is a tech-based organization, so I would imagine the view on AI or automation is a little bit more accepting than maybe we've got some audience members in healthcare or transportation or some of these industries that maybe don't have automation just packed into what they do daily. So, any thoughts on how our audience can best communicate upward?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first start by aligning with your leadership team on what the gaps currently are. Or again, like I've talked about, getting feedback from candidates and maybe what they feel that they're missing or what could lead to a better experience. Aligning with your leadership team on first, like, hey, here's what we're doing really well, and here's what those gaps are. So
Hmm.
if you agree with me that those are the most important gaps to go try to fix, then I want to present to you some solutions, and then spend some time in working through some different options, maybe utilizing a new platform or a new tool, maybe something that has AI built into it, and test those out and see how they work. And I think we say this a lot here at Zapier, but like showcase the impact of it. So versus going back to them to say, hey, I tried several new tools. I think this one might be the best. Can we try it? Really illustrate to the leadership team, here's what this would do for us as a company. I'm really advocating for this tool. Maybe start small. I know we don't have a huge budget, so I want to start with this one. Perfect world, I'd love to have this other tool, very expensive, but I think we should start here. This is what it would solve. I've been testing it out. Here's what the impact would be for our company. If implemented the right way, it might save X amount of time. It might save X amount of money. And so that's why I think we should move forward with it. Maybe we test it out and do a small pilot. Maybe we only do it with this part of the organization and see how it works. And if it goes well, then maybe we scale to the rest of the company. So I think first aligning on what those gaps are. And then when you think about presenting, think about the impact that it would have on the company.
Yeah, love that. Impact. Love that word. Kim, thank you. I had a couple more questions, and I looked at the clock and I was like, oh, I don't have time for a few more questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up here. But Kim, as I pull up your LinkedIn as the QR code so our audience can connect with you, um, if our audience were to take one thing away from today's webinar, a little, golden nugget of information or something you really hope you got across today, what would that be?
That's such a tough question too, because there's so
I
many
know.
things that comes to my mind. I would say, whatever it is that you are interested in doing or learning, don't be afraid to tell other people around you. Whether it's something that is maybe a challenge that you're facing, maybe as a leader you think I'm stuck in this place and I don't know how to overcome it. Maybe you want to implement automation in a certain place, but you don't know where to begin. I would just say, don't be afraid to tell someone else, whether that's a colleague of yours, a mentor, someone you look up to, a coach. Sometimes I think we hold ourselves back because we think, well, I don't want someone to know that that's an opportunity for me. But if you can put that out there and share that with others, again, it's amazing how many people will be there to support you, offer you resources, offer you support, giving you guidance. So I would just say, don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for something when you need it.
Yeah, I love that. And for those of you in the audience, we do have a survey that will pop up, and you can share exactly what Kim mentioned. Maybe there's something you're trying or that you would like us to touch on HR at the table, and bring Kim back, to speak on it. So I love that, Kim. And I just want to say thank you for your time. I know it's the beginning of the year. It's a fast, crazy time of the year, but really appreciate you carving out the time to share your insight with our HR the Table audience here. And then audience, just thank you for joining as well. You all are just as busy, so really appreciate the time. connect with Kim. We also have Breezy HR, today's episode sponsor and a partner of Verified First. Their contact information is there. And then in just a second, I'm going to go to the next slide and give you all some Sherman HRCI credit for that ongoing education. So let me just jump over there so you all can take a screenshot, a picture, and apply that to your portal as well. And just for everyone, if you can, just give us 30 seconds and provide feedback in the survey that's going to pop up here in just a little bit. We would greatly appreciate that. Season 5. So we really want to make sure we continue to bring you all some valuable insight. And again, Kim, thank you for your time today. Really, really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great
Yes.
experience.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your week and stay tuned for episode 2 next month. All right. Bye, all.